Hello, and welcome to another episode of Heritage Talk. Today is Casual Friday, so of course we're all dressing very casually. And
As casual as I get.
it's casual. Well, that's pretty smart, actually, for you. I'd say.
Well, again, the jumpers just hide the fact the shirt's not ironed, but when are my shirts ever ironed?
Yeah. To be honest, I haven't ironed ever since I left home. So, what even is the point of ironing? I don't get it.
Weddings, funerals. That's about it.
Well, yeah. Apart from that. So, what's been happening in the news lately? Quite a lot.
Well, where do you want to start?
Well, I think the obvious thing to start off with would be Israel Palestine, right?
yeah, that's probably the big one.
What's your take on it, first of all? Because I don't actually know what you think about it, and I'm quite interested to know.
The whole thing's a bit of a shit show, really. My biggest take on it as such is that everyone seems opposed to an ethno-state apart from when it's Israel.
Yeah.
But, joking on that front aside, there isn't a clear answer to it. Both sides are dicks. It's the most hotly contested piece of land for several thousand years. So, no one's got a better claim on it than each other. You could argue the Palestinians have been there since the Bronze Age, technically.
I've heard various things about it, and one argument I've heard on the Israeli side is that apparently that they've got these Palestinians living in somewhere like Jerusalem or somewhere in Israel, and they haven't been paying any rent or anything like that. And basically the scuffle came about because of the mosque, right? They started throwing things from the mosque or something like that. And they wanted to go in and basically take these houses that they weren't paying their dues for. Right. To be honest, the whole thing is very muddled, and I don't have enough enthusiasm to go deeply into it. But obviously there's a lot of information on either side.
Ultimately, I think we are probably two of the least qualified people to talk about this, and it's complicated. People trying to make it simple as Israel's in the right or Israel's in the wrong, or Palestine's in the right, whatever. It's never that simple. No conflict ever is, in fairness, but this one particularly so. And I think a lot of it comes down to there's a lot of anti-Semitism going about, but at the same point, it's not anti-Semitic to be anti-Israel. That seems to get conflated a lot. I think that's actually why Jeremy Corbyn got called anti-Semitic a lot, because he wasn't pro-Zion.
Yeah, which is unbelievable, really. It's kind of like on the conservative side, from the left, we get thrown the Islamophobia label.
Yeah.
And the equivalent to attack the left is anti-Semitism. That's become the thing that people throw out at the left willy-nilly. Anti-Semitic problem in your party,
which unfortunately just throwing these around doesn't, when there is actually an issue with anti-Semitism in general in places, just bandying about. Same with Islamophobia. I'll happily say there are issues with Islam, but at the same point, the amount of people you see on the right supporting the Muslims in China kind of shows that a lot of the right isn't just flat out Islamophobic.
Well, it's a mixed bag on the right, isn't it? Because the more fringe elements on the right tend to say, what about these poor Muslims? And they kind of weirdly align on the left.
And then you always get someone that will bring up the Jews. And that is just a subject that's probably too delicate to broach peacefully, I think, because a lot of people.
Can I tell you my take on the whole Israel-Palestine situation? And I think some people might find this controversial, but I don't care, frankly. I kind of just feel that Israel, the Jews have had a long history there in the past. And there are about 50 Muslim countries, right? There's one for the Jews. It's called Israel. And I kind of feel like they should just win the war and just have Palestine as their country because they can just move to like some other one of the other 50 Muslim countries. I know there's not like a great moral backing of what I'm saying, but to be frank, I think the Jews do need their own country, and I think they do need the whole of Palestine as well.
Again, this is the thing though. The whole area is a sacred holy site to many religions. Frankly, Christianity has a decent claim over the area after 13 Crusades.
Well, that's another argument as well that I pick up on. Is I know that Christians are not treated well in Muslim countries whatsoever. So I'd be much happier to, as a Christian, go as a Christian to a Jewish state than a Muslim state.
Yeah. And it's not, no, I'm trying to think of the right way to put it, because it's not all down to religion as well. Religion is causing a lot of the major tension and flare-ups there. But you've got to remember that a lot of people of these many different religions have historically lived there for a long time. So you can't just say, oh, this should be a Jewish country now, this should be a Muslim country now, or whatever, because it's deeper than that. People have been living, that's part of the Fertile Crescent. It's the tip of it. People have been living there since the dawn of civilized culture, effectively, since agrarianism became a thing. And it goes on about, ultimately, the Palestinians are, if you take the Bible as a slightly historical document, they're named in the Bible. It's where we get Philistine from. Now, but again, so what, should the Israelis take back Egypt because of the Exodus?
Well, I'm going to be extremely honest here, and I think they should take the rest of Palestine on the basis that the Palestinians have been attacking them, and just let the Palestinians move somewhere else.
Historically, a lot of what brought the issue was actually caused by the British after the First World War.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, but it was between us and France. We drew up who was going to have what in the Middle East.
Yeah, and also, we immigrated a lot of people too there.
We immigrated a lot of people to the Middle East.
Effectively, yeah, the British Mandatory Authority post World War One.
Are you telling me there's fish and chip shops in Lebanon?
No. There was again, I'm going off parts of Wikipedia here for the specific details, but I knew the general gist at least. But it's the British Mandatory Authority. And
it used to be called British Palestine as well. And,
yes.
It's a shame, really, because that's quite a good name.
But again, bear in mind this was owned by the Ottomans before that. You can't just. There's no simple drawing a line. It's the same thing as trying to divide Czechoslovakia. Oh wait, we did that badly.
I'll tell you an argument where I would sort of analogize it to is the Kurds in Iraq. Is it Syria?
Yeah, northern Iraq mostly.
They should definitely have their own state. They're the biggest ethnic group that don't have their own state. But you could easily say the Kurds can't have Iraq or Syria because it's the Iraqi and the Syrians' land, Okay,
yeah. So what do you do then about French Quebec?
We live in it. These countries are democratic, so they actually have a referendum. So that was that problem solved. But
again, I don't think that solves it with Scotland, does it? Well, what about Castle?
They don't know what they want in Scotland, do they? And quite frankly, most of England doesn't care anyway, so they can do what they want.
I suppose that is probably the next subject to get onto, because, as I say, I think ultimately with the Israeli-Palestine issue, we're not educated enough to properly discuss that. And again, I don't think there's a clear resolution to it anyway.
Well, we've got a comment here from King Edward VIII, and it says, Christians were treated well in Syria until liberal Western democracies including Israel, started
Mhm.
funding, training, arming Islamist militants.
But actually, a lot of it was training the anti-Islamist militants. The Ba'athist Party of Iraq was very anti-Islam. It was a very secular party. And that was, of course, Saddam Hussein's party. And yeah, you can see how that ended up.
But I think he's referring to, wasn't it George Bush
Yes.
partly responsible for training the people that would eventually become ISIS, right?
Yes, ultimately, yeah. But again, that's all the point. A lot of that was trained in opposition to the likes of Saddam Hussein or various dictators that were put there in the first place by training people to overthrow previous dictators or fight for their own independence.
And against Russia and Afghanistan.
Yes.
And there's a really good film about that called Charlie Wilson's War.
Yep.
And was that, I think that was what would eventually become the Taliban. These people they armed to kick the Russians out of Afghanistan, basically.
I mean, this wasn't just the Middle East. This is Middle East. This goes all the way into Egypt as well. The destabilization of Egypt. That has. Bear in mind, most people don't realize Saddam Hussein was trained by the CIA in Egypt.
Right.
It sounds like a conspiracy theory thing, that I'm making up, but it's genuinely true.
Yeah. I definitely think there's a lot of things to do with the CIA that are very sketchy. I think even Trump was trying to look into them in some capacity at one point, wasn't he? I'm not quite sure.
It wouldn't surprise me. It was because I've said on there, it's almost like training revolutionaries comes back to bite you in the arse. Yeah, it obviously. But
when has training revolutionaries worked, though? I mean, in a good way, not like Cuba or something like that, which ended terribly.
I mean, work for the French in Vietnam, I guess.
The French in Vietnam, but they were absolutely brutal, weren't they?
The Americans still lost.
Is France the reason why the Americans lost?
Probably not, but
Well, they're using French weapons.
Iraq was for the Iraq War. France had a lot of dealings with Iraq under Saddam Hussein.
The French are a weird one because they had this empire. Obviously, it wasn't as good as the British Empire, which is obviously the best empire to ever exist.
It's Britain, Rome, maybe Mongolia.
Of course. But the French don't seem to have really gotten much out of their empire. They've got the worst countries, Algeria, some crappy country in Africa, I can't remember. I mean, I'm sure it's lovely for the people who live there, but I don't personally want to go there.
What, France or the countries I own?
All their colonies. Haiti, absolutely terrible country. Would never want to go there.
It's pretty accurate.
That was the first country to ever get taken over by the slaves who were in the country, right? It was the first big slave revolt.
Spartacus would like to have a word.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, didn't exactly overthrow the Roman Empire, but if we're talking major slave revolts, I don't think we can discount Spartacus there.
Okay. Well, after Spartacus, it was the next one.
But anyway, yeah, on to Scotland. So, of course, Nicola Sturgeon is one short of a majority. And he is now saying, yes, we need to have IndyRef too. Not forgetting that that's not a power the Scottish government has to call. And
I think you'll find that's granted by the Queen, Scotland.
It's down to Westminster. And
Westminster, sorry.
Ultimately, a lot of other countries aren't going to recognise, even if Scotland does hold an independence referendum and say they come back and vote to leave, then most countries aren't going to recognise that because it brings up so many issues with Catalonia. Because Spain doesn't want to get rid of Catalonia,
but
Spain wants to keep Catalonia.
I think Scotland would leave the UK whether or not they could join the EU.
I mean, I don't think Scotland would vote to leave.
You don't think Scotland would vote to leave?
No. If you look at the tradition, if you look at the way Scotland's been voting, the more votes went to unionist parties in the Scottish elections than went to separatist parties.
That's true. Yeah.
Rather ironically, the unionist vote isn't unified, and again, it seems to be going about 50-50 on leave or remain in Scotland.
And apparently
which way the wind's blowing.
The SNP don't actually have a majority in Parliament, in the Scottish Parliament.
Well, yeah, they're one short.
But they are. They have a majority for a referendum because the Greens, for some reason, back a referendum. But apparently, not every. It's not an overwhelming majority of Green Party voters that want an independent Scotland. So they're basically, like you say, they haven't got a proper majority whatsoever. And apparently the polls have been going much like independence, support for independence was high, I think, like a few months ago. It's since leveled down quite a bit, and it's still union.
It seems to fluctuate with Nicola Sturgeon's popularity ratings.
Yeah.
And again, that's what I'm saying. It's down to which way the wind's blowing on the day of the referendum, ultimately. I think
Someone
it's going to be 50-50.
Someone said here SNP only got 31% of the voting public, less than Brexit. But I imagine that's taken into account the people who didn't vote at all. So I don't know how many people actually voted, but not for the SNP. I'm guessing it's probably like a 55.
Well, the thing is, it's also party. That's in terms of parties and seats, so voting percentages aren't quite respected. Because look back at UKIP when UKIP got more votes than the SNP, but got far fewer seats. So you can't go straight on percentages there. But if it was a straight leave or remain referendum, then that's how that was. You'd have to do that.
Yeah. Well, essentially, someone's put the latest polls said 60% are against independence. So
I generally think the majority of Scots don't care. I think it's a non-issue for most people.
Do you reckon Boris Johnson could just pull something out of the bag randomly and say, "Go on then, have it. Let's have a referendum."
I don't know. Maybe he will, but
that would put it to bed, wouldn't it?
Well, we said that last time.
Well,
if Nicola Sturgeon got another referendum and they voted to remain, what would she do?
She would just keep on banging the same drum, wouldn't she?
Yeah, exactly.
That's her whole political existence.
It's keep voting until you vote the right way. You plebs.
Basically, the EU, yeah.
This is why first past the post is cancer and should be scrapped. Yeah, first past the post is a terrible system. Technically speaking, the English can't kick the Scots out of the Union as well, because if you go by the monarchy, actually, it was the United Kingdom of Scotland. In terms of monarchy, it was the Scottish monarch that took over the English crown.
Yes,
but the Act of Union isn't.
What year was it?
Anyway, the Act of Union or the Scottish monarch taking over the English crown? Because they're two different events.
I know. The Act of Union.
Oh God, I'm terrible on dates. 1707.
Oh, you bastards! You got it right. Yeah. Someone else has got it right as well. Yeah, 1707. So 313 years we've been going strong. But relationships do run its course eventually.
Well, this is if there is no real logic to Scotland leaving. I get the idea of wanting a great sense of national identity, and I understand devolving more power to local governments. I'm well in favour of that, but it has to be all over the Union, not just Scotland and Wales and a bit of Ireland.
Yeah, so you believe in the federal system like I do?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's much better.
English Parliament in York, right?
Yeah. Or have a northern government and a southern government. Fuck it, give Cornwall its own government.
Mercia and Northumbria, right? And what's the middle?
Let's split it back by the Danelaw.
Is it Mercia at the bottom, Northumbria at the top? What's the one in the middle?
I thought Mercia was in the middle.
As Mercia is in the middle, and yeah.
Let me Google the Danelaw.
No, sorry. What's the bottom one? Oh, it's evading me.
Let's find out.
Someone comment. What's the bottom
Wessex.
one? Wessex.
Yeah,
I don't even remember my own region. Bring back Wessex.
Oh dear. Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense.
I think there's a full reason why it's smart, because also then you can keep London a lot more separate to everywhere else as well.
Yeah.
Because, we're both dirty Southerners, and we're not fans of London.
No.
Most people I know, and fuck's sake, I'm only in Kent, and most people aren't fans of London. I can see London.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's not British, is it? It's just a.
Well, it's not a matter of that. It's not representative of the rest of the country. And if it's that out of touch, when it's within visible distance, I can only imagine how out of touch it is to Northern Yorkshire.
Imagine if they made a law that 75% of Londoners had to be British. I mean, you'd still probably end up with middle class tosspots eating their avocado. So probably wouldn't make much.
If that's what they want to do, that's fine. But they can't make legislation to affect the rest of the country based solely on London. It's all well and good putting in these drink driving laws when you're in London, when there's a bus every 5 minutes. But if you've got a pub out in the countryside where the roads are fairly quiet anyway, and people are only going straight home. Now, I get the argument of people wanting people to be safe. And I know we're going to a very specific example here. But if you look at the olden days, police caught you drink driving home. They'd say, look, you're going straight home. I know where you live. Be sensible. That's it.
So how is that different to anywhere else in England?
No, that's my point. That's how it should be. But because London, let's tighten all the drink driving rules, because people can just get the bus everywhere. People can just catch the tube or the train. When that's not really feasible for the vast majority of the country.
So drink driving should be made legal outside of London. Is that what you're saying?
I think drink driving laws should be relaxed, definitely based on ability rather than a discrete limit.
Yeah. You're a landlord. Sorry, you're not a landlord at all. You used to work in a pub.
Publican. Former publican.
Okay. A couple pints is all right, isn't it? You're never going to go over the limit with a couple pints, are you? You can do, can't you?
2 pints of Foster's at 4.2 will put you over the limit.
But Foster's, isn't that one of the weakest ones?
4.2%, if I'm remembering right.
No, that's my least favourite one.
Yeah, it's everyone's least favourite one. It tastes like piss, but...
Apparently even the Australians don't even drink it.
Yeah, kind of. I actually met the guy who designed Foster's a long time ago. It was designed to appeal to the English palate. It was actually originally an Australian brand. It was bought out by an English company. They tried selling the Australian stuff in the UK. No one liked it. So they said, we just bought this brand. We spent so much on it. Brew a lowest common denominator beer that we can just sell. And that's the thing with Foster's. There is nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
There's just nothing right about it.
Yeah.
It's the most bland definition of beer.
It's basically piss water, is what it is.
Pretty much.
Anyone who drinks Foster should have all their rights removed.
Agreed. Fully agreed.
Yeah. Send them to the prison that is Australia.
Oh, dear. So, we've also, did you see Boris's announcements earlier?
Oh, talking about the Indian variant. I didn't watch the press conference. I saw little things on the BBC about it. Apparently,
it's a variant of major concern.
It may be easily transmissible.
Well,
that's what I heard.
Despite the fact that the government is also admitting that the vaccine is effective against it, the reason the Indian variant has caused so much fear is because it's spread in India, one of the most densely populated countries on the planet, and one of the countries with the worst hygiene. For fuck's sake, they sit on the roof of the train because they don't have enough seats. This is a country where they will shit in the water they are drinking in. They shit in the sink and bin.
You know, I've heard a story recently, and I should have picked up on the details on this, but to be honest, I hear so many things lately because I'm part of a few anti-lockdown groups and things like that. But apparently, there's a sports team in America, and they've had a few players which had the vaccine, and they tested positive for coronavirus.
Right.
I don't know what team it is. I don't think it's. I don't know if it's American football or what. But yeah, kind of funny, really. I also heard, ages ago in Italy, they tested the kiwi fruit that tested positive for coronavirus.
I remember reading something about that, actually. But I can't say I got a source on it. But again, it's constant fear mongering. How long until they announce? Yeah, we're going to go along with lowering the restrictions on Monday, but we might have to delay the next step. Well, of course it is, because they're just going to keep doing that. It's going to be a constant. Oh, there's another variant. We're going to have to lock down again. It's absolutely pathetic at this point.
I think. See, this is hard for me because whenever it's to do with coronavirus, I'm getting so much information that I get information overload. But I think maybe it was Dr. Mike Eden who said something about there's no way it could mutate that much. It's going to be this pretty much the same. Like the most it could change would be like by a few %. So,
I mean, ultimately, I'm no epidemiologist, so I couldn't say on that front. But if it's anything like the cold changing, then that would sound about right. And
yeah, I don't see why it would. I can't see it being able to evade the vaccine, that you'd have to make like a new vaccine or something.
Again, ultimately, to me, it doesn't even come down to what the danger is. It comes down to the principle the government should be acting on. And to me, the government is not there to protect you. The government is there to enable you to protect yourself. And if you want to take a risk, you should be more willing to. Seatbelts should not be mandatory, for example, by the same token.
Well, I don't know. I probably disagree with that, because when they introduced seatbelts, deaths did go down by a lot.
Oh, definitely. And same point of, if they weren't mandatory, I would still wear one.
But you needed to make it law, I think, to make people be sensible.
Not necessarily.
Same with motorbike helmets.
You can say then you provide tax incentives for things like that. You can provide tax incentives to car manufacturers that put seatbelts in their car by default.
So someone said here seatbelts weren't mandated in the USA till the 90s. Yeah,
exactly. It's not a matter of whether it saves deaths or not. The point is more, people just want to be free to be stupid. They should be free to. People want to be really dumb. They should be free to. Now, that freedom ends when you harm another person. So, yeah, you should be free to drink, drive all you want. But as soon as you crash into someone or damage some property by doing so, that's where your freedom ended, because you effectively infringed on to use that very libertarian concept, the harm principle.
Well, you see, I would use another argument, and I don't know if there's a name for this type of argument, but I would say by making the public wear seatbelts when they're driving, you're protecting the father of a child from losing their father and things like that. So I would probably use that.
But ultimately then that father wouldn't have been a responsible father if they weren't going to wear it anyway. But
people aren't responsible. Sometimes you need.
Okay, but it's not the government's place to be responsible for them.
Well, that's what a libertarian would say, but I'm not a libertarian.
True. Very true. I can understand taking minimal precautions and so forth and incentivizing them, but again, I just don't see the point. I think it's underestimating the public and saying, effectively treating everyone like they're idiots.
So, okay, you're happy to interfere in. You're not happy interfering in the safety of others, but you are happy interfering with the free market. Does that not? Surely that doesn't align very well.
Markets require a minimal amount of regulation to prevent monopolies.
And dangerous acts such as driving require a minimal amount of safety to prevent deaths. There you go. I've changed your mind. See that? Clip that. I've changed his mind.
I mean, also, you do have a big issue in the UK in that the roads were never designed for cars. In America, it's a very different situation. But I agree. It's not a clear-cut issue. I'll definitely agree on that point. And you could make reasonable arguments for a state to interfere on an individual's freedoms on a case-by-case basis. Maybe seatbelts is one where that case can be made better than others. But, ultimately, now it's become common practice for everyone to wear seatbelts. If they got rid of the law mandating it, would people suddenly stop wearing them? Probably not.
Yeah.
So that law is now defunct and should be got rid of.
Well, yeah, I guess that's a good argument, but culture can change easily, and then it could swing back the other way, and people could start dying again.
It could.
But I'm not libertarian. I mean, I don't want to say whatsoever because I believe in freedom. The freedom parts of libertarianism, but things you see, I would, when you go into Tesco's, for instance. And there's a lovely grab bag of minstrels. Oh, only £1. And what do you end up doing? Eat the whole bag of minstrels, and then you end up becoming fat, and then you end up putting a burden on the NHS. So I would probably...
what the solution there is?
What's that?
Get rid of the NHS.
Well...
Nothing to have a burden on then.
Well, yeah, I'm with you on that.
It's not my fault that someone else got fat.
I'm with you on that. I think we should have an insurance system.
I think the NHS should exist as a safety net.
Yeah, for the people, it should serve the people that can't afford it. But
I think in general, the NHS is a good idea. It's just very badly structured. But at the same point, I think, if someone through overeating has caused obesity, it's called obesity themselves and develop issues because of that, they should have to pay something towards medical contributions, medical solutions if they need it. It shouldn't be down to the NHS solely. If you have caused a medical issue with yourself, I'm not talking about accidents like getting run over by a car or something, but if you've gotten so fat that you can't walk or something, you need, there's also different from having a thyroid problem and so forth.
You'd have to pay for it.
Yeah, or at least pay parts more towards it.
Imagine if...
And yes, I am pro fat shaming. I've always, as someone who is not exactly skinny myself and is technically obese by BMI standards, I'm pro fat shaming.
Yeah, you are fat, Adnan. I've been watching you lately.
Oh, I know. I put on 2 stone the past year.
I've actually been on a sort of diet, and I was 85 kilos to begin with, and now I'm 75 kilos. And I plan to get down to 70. I think that's the perfect weight for my size.
I think mine's because I'm quite short, so my weight is meant to be weirdly low. I'm 85 kilos at the moment, so.
80 what kilos?
85.
Okay, well, you can go on the exact same journey as me then and get down to 75.
Oh, I've been down to, I think the lowest I was at was 70. But I think I'm meant to be closer to like 60 or something for my height.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. But BMI is not actually too accurate anyway. But it's a good benchmark at least. But again, that was sort of just an example as one of, I'm not the slimmest person. Yes, I am pro-fat shaming, unless it's a medically caused issue.
If anyone wants to help Adnan with his dieting, feel free to shame him right now and insult him.
Look, ultimately, beer's just too good. That's my problem.
Yeah, some put also based on BMI logic, heavyweight boxers are classified as obese. So,
so is the entirety of the England rugby team.
I was going to say, imagine if you know, like when you're driving and you get stopped by the police, you have to do a breathalyzer, and you pay a price for that. Imagine if you had to do the same thing every time you got treated by the NHS.
Yeah,
and if you're over the limit, you had to pay for it.
Yeah,
Imagine how much that would, how much money that would save the NHS, because we all know that a hell of a lot of accidents happen because people are drunk.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that, where if it's caused by your own stupidity, then you pay more towards it. Perfectly fine, I think. Same point. If you get hit by a car, then no, you shouldn't have to pay towards it. If you're running and you've slipped and broken your leg, okay, accidents happen. So there's no, they can't exactly, you can't say this is the cutoff point, but I think there's a more reasonable system than what is current could be designed.
Yeah, definitely.
Japanese colleagues measuring?
Yeah, I was looking at that.
What?
No, that's based.
Based and invasive.
Have you seen the meme that one of our friends sent? And it's the Prime Minister Abe, the ex-Prime Minister, and he's like, fertility is down in Japan and we need more Japanese children. It would be kind of good if you started making some Japanese babies. And then the next meme picture is like, you've got a gun. It's like, make babies now.
If only.
Someone mentioned actually Japan that if we'd seen the figures for coronavirus, I think they're going up.
Let's have a look.
And also, they've got the Olympics coming. I think around sort of late August.
They are on the rise.
So, what's going to happen with the Olympics?
Well, we don't know. I don't think anything's been said new, at least. A state of emergency has been extended in several regions of Japan. But, yeah. At the same point, this is still looking at case data. Their total number of deaths is 11,000. And total cases are 667,000. So this is, I think, partly the problem is looking at case data. If you look at deaths, the deaths are spiking, but that was a 7-day average at its peak. At the moment, it's 98 7-day average.
Olympics are in July, apparently. Finish first week of August.
I mean, population and tiny in comparison to population and density. Yeah, you think the greater metropolitan area of Tokyo, I think, is about the size of England.
Yeah, it's like 20 million or something stupid, isn't it?
But no, I mean just in terms of land area alone. It's absolutely fucking massive. So, and yeah, I suppose actually Japan is probably one of the ones that is best comparable to the UK, because it does have also places that are a lot less densely populated. But no two countries are going to be completely comparable there.
So let's talk about the aftermath of Labour, the aftermath as well, because I think that's a pretty interesting subject to cover. They lost over 300 councillors in that election.
Yeah.
I think it's around 317, something like that. And then the Tories gained about 300 themselves. But as we discussed before, we think this is more due to the lack of the Labour vote rather than Labour votes switching to Conservative.
But again, this question is still, why is Labour losing its voters? And I think what I put on Facebook the other day is still quite true, which was part of it is because Labour sees the working class and poor as mutually the same.
Yeah.
When there is a large portion of poor working class. You can also be rich and be working class. And similarly, you can be middle class and upper class and be poor. If Prince Harry lost all his money and was living on the street, he would still be upper class.
It's like saying Danny Dyer is upper class.
Exactly. Danny Dyer is not upper. And so this is why I think also a lot of the journalist class, the let's have a £5 coffee every lunch, get an avocado toast, and spend 30 quid every day just to go out for brunch. They think they're working class, despite the fact they've been working from home and so forth, because they're not that economically successful.
Well, yeah.
And Labour seems to think that any economic success moves you out of working class, and that people therefore should want to not be working class.
Yeah, well, there was someone talking about this, which someone screenshotted, wasn't there? Where they were saying electricians aren't working class because they earn too much money. And yeah, I'm an electrician myself, so I'm pretty disappointed by that because I do consider myself a lovely member of the working class. But I mean, I'm just reveling in the demise of Labour, and I saw Nigel Farage was on Fox News recently. I haven't watched it, but he's saying as a warning to the Democrats that if you do this far left crap like Labour have done, then you're going to turn into Labour and lose all your seats and everything like that.
There was a meme I saw the other day, and it was Labour was saying, "No, we shouldn't put people in cages." And so then you had the Republican Party and the swastika and the fascist axe and sticks saying, "No, we absolutely should put people in cages." And then you got the Democrat Party. Half the guards should be women. And that's the kind of take that is coming out of Labour and the Democrats, where it's a case of it's not a case of let's actually talk about the issue. It's saying, oh, but we should have representation in this. Similar, like, did you see the railway? I think it was LNER that replied to someone on Twitter who was offended because the announcer on the train said, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen."
Oh yes, of course. How could I miss that one? Yeah.
Yes. Now, what a lot of people haven't noticed is that guy that complained and was offended is a railway union rep.
Oh, interesting.
And Labour activist.
Makes sense.
Oh. But again, that's kind of the point.
Someone put here, never correct your enemy if they make a mistake. Who quoted that? I can't remember.
I think that's Churchill, isn't it?
Churchill.
Never interrupt your enemy whilst they make it, or something like that. But the point, but I still disagree with that because, as I keep saying, we need a strong opposition. Because currently we have a quite authoritarian conservative government that, frankly, in places is incompetent, and we need an opposition to hold them to account. Liberal Democrats aren't going to do it. Labour's evidently not going to do it. So otherwise, unless we want to cut a government that is going to run rampant and do whatever it wants and not be scrutinised, this is the reason we have this political system that we do. It's the part of those checks and balances to keep the government under control.
Well, I'm happy for Labour to at least be in demise because there's no way that they would ever be anything but more authoritarian than the Tories.
True, but if they learn from it.
And I think it's quite interesting. I was listening to the Spectator podcast, which is actually quite good, despite despite it being the Spectator. I would never actually read the Spectator magazine. I've read it a couple of times.
The Spectator, actually, it's quite an interesting mix.
Well, when I actually did get the print version, there were people I actually wrote a letter because I was annoyed at, I think it was Fraser Nelson going on a real anti-Trump tirade. And I think a couple of them, including Fraser Nelson, have actually become more right-wing and conservative as things have gone along. But they're still just reformed leftists. There's no proper conservatives at the Spectator. I mean, they have Christopher Hitchens appear on the odd occasion, and Douglas Murray. But in fact, what I'm on about, I don't think Peter Hitchens has been on the Spectator. But
no, I don't think he'd go on the Spectator.
but maybe he's written an article. I'm not sure. But yeah, Douglas Murray is about as conservative as it gets. You know, a gay journalist.
Well, again, Douglas Murray has some weird takes as well. I think a lot of the time he's a bit reactionary for the sake of it.
Well, I think him and Sam Harris messed up big. No, not Sam Harris. Jordan Peterson. I think they messed up big time because they had a talk, and they basically said, "Oh, these people who said there was fraud in the presidential election, they're just being exactly like the left, and not being happy when they don't win." And it's like,
I agree with that at the time, because there were questions to be asked about it.
Yeah.
But to make the outright claim of fraud is a very different point.
But there
are very suspicious things going on with this election. Can we look into that? That's a reasonable thing to do.
But this was about 6 months after the election, and Douglas Murray and Jordan Peterson were like, "Yeah, of course there was no substantial fraud." And it's like, well, come on, can you at least do some research before you say something so stupid like that? It's just I can't take anyone seriously who thinks that there wasn't fraud.
Perhaps a better way to put it is no more substantial fraud than normal.
But there was very substantial fraud. To me, it's not even.
Should we talk about the 2004 Florida vote at that rate?
Is that the Bush one where it was like in question? Yeah.
Exactly. As I'm saying, Time Magazine straight up admitted they falsified the election. Yeah. There is a lot of very suspicious, shady stuff going on, and the media definitely collaborated to influence people's votes there.
Someone mentioned Delingpole. I listened to the Delingpole podcast. That's pretty good. He is a bit of a boomer, Delingpole. I remember he kept having a go at his fans because they said, "Oh no, we're not using Patreon." It's like, why do you guys have to be so picky and everything? Like he didn't pick up on the fact that people totally left Patreon. Jordan Peterson, Carl Sagan of Accads all left Patreon, and he's like, "Why are you guys? You don't want to have this, you don't want to have that." It's like, come on.
But
do you not read
is that also the argument of pick your battles?
Yeah, I mean, the Delingpole does annoy me sometimes because I don't know. There's something about it seems like he likes things like fox hunting because that's conservative, and it's like stuff like that annoys me. It's like just be conservative.
Fox hunting annoys you?
No, I've got nothing wrong with fox hunting, but the way he talks about it, it's like, oh yes, I love a good fox hunt and everything. It's like, I don't believe you. It's more like he's putting on an image.
Exactly. Something about that's what a lot of journalists on both sides of the fence do. Ultimately they've got an image, and that's what sells.
Yeah.
And Piers Morgan is not from everyone that knows him has said he's not as reactionary and inflammatory in person in real life, but he plays up to that for the cameras and the media because that's what sells. That's his brand. His brand is pissing people off, and it works. The fact that the Good Morning Britain's views dropped massively after he left, that shows that he was doing something right.
Yeah. This is totally not to do with what we're talking about whatsoever, but can I tell you my favorite? I've been hearing random things that ethnats have been saying on the internet.
Right.
And I just find them hilarious. To me, they're just like the crazy leftists. And I'm not just saying that to like make a point like, ho, 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 they're so terrible. Like some of the arguments they come out with are so ridiculous. My favorite one is Americans aren't conservative. They're nationalist. They can't be conservative because they weren't originally from America. They were from Britain and elsewhere in Europe. So you can never, and they're like, and I said, like, no, that's not what a conservative is about. You're not born, your ancestors aren't from there. And then it's like, no. And I was like, they were like, no, that's the definition. And I'm like, no, actually, the definition's here, and it says people who have traditional beliefs, blah, 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 whatever it is. And it's not what you're saying. and then immediately it'd be like, okay, yeah, but the Jews, and it's like, what?
I think, because I've been thinking about the whole ethno thing lately.
It's a weird phenomenon.
I think a lot of it actually comes down to confusion in certain terms that are societally used interchangeably. Now, I've been thinking about a lot of this because I've been reading a lot of human history and anthropology and so forth, and it just got me sort of thinking. We use the term state and nation to mean the same thing, when they kind of don't. State is a political entity, but you could arguably say there's an Arab nation, as in the cultural nation of the Arabic people. But that is also distinct from the Arabic race as an ethnicity. So you have the nationality, the ethnicity in terms of biological heritage, and you have the culture side of it. And also you can argue you have a separate point from the biological heritage as the actual biological nature of the individual, as opposed to their ancestry. And all four of those things get very muddied.
Well, I think part of what the FNATs do is they like to, well, they seems like they make their own definitions anyway, but they like it to be muddled in a way that makes them confuse people and end up with the right explanation, which to me never makes sense.
Okay, I'm going to have a controversial take here.
Okay.
I'm going to be very specific about how I word it, and I'm going to try and back it up with some history. Those who are saying about demographic change in the UK and are going in that direction with things aren't necessarily saying how got cramp. Saying how that's such a bad thing aren't actually technically wrong, because ethnic change is upstream from cultural change. And my backing up for this is ancient Egypt. The second indeterminate period of ancient Egypt, around I think 1200, 1300 BC, is where there were the 14th and 15th dynasties of Egypt split. And in southern Egypt, you had the traditional Egyptians. In northern Egypt, you had the Hyksos. Now, the Hyksos were Levantine kings, and they didn't just pop up out of nowhere. There was a lot of, in the several hundred years before that, there were large amounts of increasing trade with Levant, and there was an increasing, growing Levantine population in northern Egypt. So that sort of started to spiral into trying to become its own kingdom. Now, I'm not saying that's obviously what's going to happen and so forth, but it's understandable as to why there is a concern about demographic shift and cultural shift. But even then, the Hyksos kings were still distinctly Egyptian in their ruling and style, but also were distinct enough to be noticeable. It's you can't say, oh, maybe this is good or bad or whatever, because it's several thousand years removed. But it's an understandable, logical way of thinking, okay, this is where it could end up going. So to be concerned about cultural change happening because of ethnic change, which they are not intrinsically linked, but one is often downstream from the other, that is an understandable point. It's where the two get put sort of just as a straight correlation. That's I think where it loses a lot of people. But if you say that certain changes are downstream from certain other changes, a lot of it can be put a lot more reasonably, I think.
That is very well put. And the problem is with people like me is I get pigeonholed on each side. So for the people who it isn't obvious to. I do think race, being concerned that you become a minority race in your own country is a valid concern. At the same time, I don't think you should base policy purely on race, because, like you say, race and culture are not into what's the word?
They're not directly correlated.
They are linked to an extent. I'm trying to think, like intermittently linked or something like along the.
They're not intrinsically directly linked to one another.
Intrinsically, they're not intrinsically linked. There is a definite link between ethnicity and culture for sure, but they're not directly correlated. Part of who I am is not 100% because I'm white.
Again, this is also the point. So you can be of a nationality and of any ethnicity within that nationality, and you can have a culturally act as a culture can span multiple nationalities, or not even make up a whole nationality. Similarly, an ethnicity can do the same. An ethnicity normally spreads a lot larger. It's complicated. It's not going to be just a case of, oh, there are too many of any demographic coming over here, and that's what's wrong. Even if it is a cultural group, because then you get enclaves, which is kind of like what happened with the Hyksos, effectively. So, yeah, that you can say that starts to become an issue, but that can also be changed. So, if people come over here and take up the British culture, and even if they bring their own bits as well, this is how culture develops and evolves, by bringing new ideas from other cultures and adopting the good bits. Not just saying, well, ours is the best, ours is this, and we don't want it to ever change, because culture is always shifting, always, and it will always shift, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, but the thing, just to reiterate what I said earlier, that really annoys me is when people like the ethnats, similarly to the crazy leftists, is when they muck about with definitions of words.
Yeah.
And like I said, Americans can't be conservative. To me, it's a moronic statement, because it doesn't make sense. The other argument as well, which is quite interesting, which maybe I don't buy it myself, because it's not the definition that I'm accustomed to, or that I know it as, is people say, well, British is a nationality or cultural identity.
Well, that's they're both. It's both.
Well,
but
exactly.
But they're also two separate things.
But
one and not the other, or both, and yeah.
Well, this is what one of my friends says, but then they say English is an ethnicity. So
yeah, you can be of more than one ethnicity.
But again, I don't see it as either or. Britishness,
more than one culture, and more than one ethnicity, and more than one nationality.
Yeah, Britishness can be culture or ethnicity, and so can Englishness, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't see Sadiq Khan as either. So
I do. He ultimately is British.
Well, yeah, in the sense that he's
this is what, a few weeks ago, someone decided that Dave Lammy wasn't English. Now, I don't like Dave Lammy. I think he's reactionary and
race baiter.
Yeah, but he's English. He's born and raised in England. His heritage isn't English. His heritage, but again, that's irrelevant. Really?
Oh yeah, he is culturally English.
He's culturally English.
Traditionally,
in the traditional, is naturally English. His ancestry is not.
Yeah, but from a traditional perspective, I kind of feel that morally.
But then, how far back do you take your ancestry?
Yeah, but then it makes me question as well. You know, moral. What is it to be? Would it be to be morally British? Because I like to think, oh, free speech and things like that. But and then I think more recently, how many people do actually support free speech and things like that? It's probably not as
Are
high
these
as
terms descriptive or prescriptive? Are these terms descriptive or prescriptive?
Oh, can you break that down for me, please?
If it's prescriptive, British is defined and you have to fulfill that definition to be British. Whereas if it's descriptive, whatever the British people are is British.
Well, yeah, I have this romantic idea that Englishness is built on the works of Shakespeare and the other philosopher I always forget. All these great people of the past. Sorry?
Chaucer, probably. You're probably thinking.
No. So, anyway, so I definitely have a romantic idea of what is Englishness and Britishness, but the problem is how much of it is relevant today. Similarly, Greece, for example, apparently there's a staggering number of Greek people that don't believe in democracy, and yet they invented it.
Yeah, but again, they're several thousand years removed from those who invented democracy.
Yeah. So who am I to say that, oh, you're not being a true Greek, you should believe in democracy, you know?
Exactly. It's there's an argument to be had on both sides. You know, is American someone who subscribes to the ideal of the American dream, or is America described by what it is now?
Yeah, but that's the Civil War basically happening in America now. But yeah, the American experience. No, I won't say that. It does feel like you very much subscribe to the American values when you go to America, and I do really like that they're very assertive of their values. It's in their constitution. The constitution, it can be changed, but it's very hard to change. And you know, number one is free speech, and the next one is to have guns. To have guns.
Yeah, the right to bear arms.
And
well, I mean, again, very specifically, it's the right to bear arms against the government.
Yes.
But
yeah, it's there for a reason.
Yeah. So again, someone also did put, is America the way it is due to Native Americans or due to predominantly English colonization? Neither. It was most of the Dutch, the Spanish, and the French. Actually, most of the Spanish. The French had Louisiana and central United States now. English and Dutch sort of were tying for the East Coast.
No, but America was built on British values, I would say. It's basically...
Not just. Modern America, yes, was born out of the British colonies, yes. But again, they weren't founded as British. A lot of them were founded to get away from Britain. A lot of them were founded as Dutch or French or so forth.
No, but the founding fathers, they very much revered people like John Locke and who's the French philosopher as well?
Rousseau?
No, not Rousseau. He's absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I think it was after, wasn't
he? Montesquieu. Yeah, yes. He's very good. Well, I know I've just contradicted myself straight away because Montesquieu isn't British, but I guess it's kind of like a mix of
exactly. But that's the point. It's a mix.
British and Enlightenment values.
I mean, kind of, but also no, because it happened prior to the French Revolution.
No, but it was still.
I mean, yes,
the values were there.
Just the French Revolution.
Yeah, the values were there.
Yeah, to a point, certainly. But again, also a lot of it was stoked by the French to piss off the British anyway.
Yeah. And as much as some people might say, it would have been great to hold on to the empire, I think they did have a point there, 1776.
So what about Southern America? Is that founded solely on Spanish values? Well, no. Similar, the way the Spanish just decimated the Incan civilization was about to collapse anyway. But the way they absolutely decimated it, how is you know, that a lot of Spanish culture has supplanted the native cultures there, for better or worse. I'm not saying either way, but people have this very linear view of advancement in society, and it's obviously it's not like that. But put it this way: the Inca people were actually really quite sophisticated, despite the human sacrifice, which was more Aztec and Maya than Inca. But they, I think it was, I don't know, but they could get a message across the Andes with their network of relay runners and so forth faster than the Spanish could ride a message over there on a horseback. Yeah, they were very advanced for their area. But part of it was down to necessity. You know, certain societies didn't need to develop agrarianism. Certain societies didn't need to develop this, and this. And if a society hasn't needed to, when you come into contact with a society that has gone past that, yeah, of course you're going to be curb stomped by it.
Someone put the Spanish Portuguese Empire colonized virtually all of South and Central America, reaching as high as Northern California.
Yep.
And I remember going to Richard Brayne's house, the former leader of UKIP, and he actually has an antique globe which shows pretty much the whole of California, and I think possibly Texas as well, is all part of Mexico.
Yeah. Well,
I remember because someone actually was like moving it, and he said, "Don't move that. That's really, really antique."
That's why a lot of California has Spanish-sounding names. Los Angeles, obviously, the City of Angels, but again, Mexico is actually the Aztec name for themselves, the Mexica.
Yeah, it's because the Spanish couldn't pronounce it. That's why they changed it to Mex. Yeah, with the X sound. Yeah.
Same reason chocolate spells as chocolate and not chocolate.
Yeah.
I do. Of all the languages I've always wanted to learn, Nahuatl is one of them, which is one of the traditional languages of the Aztecs and Maya and so forth. It's the one that has the traditional cl sound at the end, except not in its name, strangely. It's spelt with that at the end, but it's pronounced Nahuatl, not Nahuatl. And it's a really, really, it's a compound language. So you can actually make an entire sentence with one word, which is why you get these long names, like the great city of the Aztecs, Tenochtitlan. Sounds
like you're speaking Arabic.
Yeah, the Aztec Empire is younger than Oxford University. But there were other societies prior to the Aztecs. People only know really about the Aztecs, the Inca, and the Maya. They weren't in the same location. You had the Olmecs, I think Tolmec was another one. There's a lot of cultures that were there before and around the same time. The Incas took over massively as an empire, partly down to when an Incan king died, the inheritance, the land didn't become the next king's. The next king had to get new land. It was still the dead old king's land. And if I remember reading something about this, if the dead Incan kings, they used to keep their house up and everything, like maintaining everything, and they'd mummify the body. And they would sit and have dinner with the dead king.
They still do that in Africa. I saw an episode with Carl Pilkington going to some nation in Africa, and you have you say goodbye for the last time.
Oh no, this wasn't a goodbye for the last time. They would keep doing that for years. When the new king had a ceremonial event, they would bring the old king along as well.
But isn't it the case with North Korea that it's isn't Kim Il Sung still president or something like that?
I'm honestly not similar. But I do know apparently Kim Jong Un invented golf.
Oh yeah, of course, and he got a hole in one in his first shot as well. I heard. Yeah,
and didn't he invent the hamburger? Apparently.
Really? I thought that was Ronald McDonald.
North Korea is odd. Do you remember a few years ago? Well, I say a few years, quite a while ago now. Because North Korea releases its propaganda on YouTube of all places. And
Really? What channel is this? How do I subscribe to
there
it?
is North Korean propaganda on YouTube. And
Does
one
it
of them,
actually have an official country YouTube channel?
I'm gonna have to check this because I'm pretty sure it does, but I'm whether it's still there, I'm not sure. But there was a
Yeah, here we go. North Korea, the current leader is president of the army. His father is still president of the country. There you go. It's still Kim Il Sung, who's president of the country. Although it's not president, is it? It's like great leader or something like that.
Here we go. There's Explore DPRK, which is the official YouTube account of the International Friendship Initiative, officially approved by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
Is it possible for you to post this in the chat? Because I want to subscribe to this.
I don't think this is the one with the. It's got their news and so forth on, but I don't think it has the propaganda one I'm thinking of.
Do you know what's the craziest thing about it as well?
I don't think I can put it in the chat. I don't think I can put it in the main comments anyway. I can put it in the private chat, but I don't know if
do it in the private chat then.
See if you can get that on the screen or something.
Oh, there. Okay. Yeah, I found it.
But there was one years ago where they were extolling about how the US is bad, and they used footage from Call of Duty. They used one of the Call of Duty cutscenes.
Okay, I've just posted it in the chat, so I think you can get that now. But the crazy thing about this YouTube channel is still less biased than the BBC.
I mean, I will give the BBC its due. It's not in itself bias. It is individual shows are biased each way, but in general, it tends to make it quite neutral as a result.
So what's the right wing one? Bargain Hunt.
Individual reporters can be biased. That when people were saying that they go quite easy on the government, well, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Have you seen Laura Kunzberg try to interview Boris Johnson?
She's quite rough on him, isn't she?
Sometimes. But again, the fact that no BBC reporter dared question the lockdown, it's bias both ways a lot of the time. So yes, it's bias.
Oh, surely we can say that it's of a middle class cosmopolitan
that
perspective.
Yes, it's not representative.
The overall arching narrative, for sure.
Yeah, it's not representative of the average person, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, we've gone on like a really weird tangent going from to the Incas to all sorts. We did originally start at Labour, so maybe we should spin back to there. I know the latest controversy is it's like one of the leaders of the unions. I'm not sure if it's Unite or one of the other ones, in response to something about immigrants getting deported. I think it was one of the main secretaries.
Yes,
said Priti Patel should get deported. And apparently this has upset people on both the left and the right of the party.
Yeah.
So you've got the people...
And Ash Sarkar, of all people, has been defending him.
Yeah. But, you're the authoritarians who want people to get banned for like the silliest reasons. So, no, come on. Smell the coffee. Eat your... How does the saying go? I don't know. Eat your cake.
Have your cake and eat it too.
Have your cake and eat it. Yeah, this is what you want. This is what you asked for. So don't complain about it.
Funnily enough, I can't actually find anything about it on BBC. I wonder why.
But it seems like Labour are eating themselves up at the moment, which is beautiful to see.
I think the split is inevitable at this point.
But I don't think that... See, there's going to be a big fight pursue between the left and the... I don't know what you call them, the Blairite Labour, I guess.
Yeah, but I think ultimately neither of them are trying to represent what people want out of Labour.
But Blairite Labour is going to win because they have the most MPs, surely.
But they don't have the most backing.
But, I mean...
Neither side has backing.
Starmer is a Blair, yeah, but then it doesn't matter what the Labour members want
Bear
because
in mind, Blair has now started criticising the wokeness of the party as well.
but Keir Starmer is in power and he is very much Blairite to me. I know people
I think whatever he thinks people want him to be.
Yeah, but he's a Blairite as far as I'm concerned. He says
his power base has now collapsed. He can't last realistically much longer unless he does something major to turn it around.
And the other big controversy is with Angela Rayner. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Yes, where she got demoted by getting promoted to a lot of other positions.
Yes, but there's more to this story than that. Apparently, Keir Starmer's secretary, who deals with all the backbench MPs,
right,
she got fired, and it was because she was saying some sort of rumours, apparently, I think about Angela Rayner.
Right.
And we found out that she got fired, and apparently a journalist asked this secretary, did you get fired for the things that you said about Angela Rayner that came out? And they didn't reply. So it obviously was because of that. And so now there's a bit of a power divide between the Angela Rayner camp and the Keir Starmer camp. And then behind that, you've got the Corbyn camp.
Mm-hmm.
Is there much overlap between the Corbyn and the Rayner camp? I'm not sure. I don't even really know.
I think Rayner's sort of one of the. It was more Long Bailey that was meant to be the successor to Corbyn. So is
it fair to say
Rayner backed Long Bailey?
So we could say there's roughly 3, maybe 4 different camps. You've got the Starmer camp, you've got the Rayner camp, you've got the Corbyn, Rebecca Long Bailey camp, right? And these 3 are all going at I guess they're all going at Starmer at the moment.
Yeah.
So I guess Starmer's time is possibly limited, right? Do you think he could make it to the next general election?
Depends when it's going to be. Because if the government gets rid of the Fixed Term Parliaments Act as it's trying to do,
that's inevitable. It's pretty much happening now.
Which is quite, I think it's quite ironic that that's been in less than 10 years.
Well, that was a Blairite policy.
Yeah,
a Blairite piece of legislation.
It was a terrible idea, I think, as well. But you've got to experiment with politics, I guess.
But why would Boris Johnson pull out a general election, within the next few years? Surely he wants to,
because of how badly Labour's doing.
So he wants to profit off of that.
Yeah.
So do you think he
think how much his popularity is going to surge as restrictions get lifted? Never mind the fact they shouldn't have been restricted in the first place.
Yeah. So June 21st, maybe give it 2-3 months, people start feeling good about themselves, then boom, not referendum, general election.
Again, maybe not quite that soon, but I think it would be silly of Boris not to try and ride the coast, but he wouldn't want to be too obvious about it either.
But you've got to do it. I mean, unless Labour are just going to keep on punishing themselves with all these controversies and things like that.
I don't think they can.
He needs to do it whilst Labour are still in turmoil.
Yeah, Labour's going to be like that for several years now.
Right.
As far as I can see. Because who's going to take over?
Well, we talked about this before in our little chat group as well, and I think Andy Burnham would be the obvious choice for them, because I do think, despite him being a bit of a knobhead,
but he's now the mayor. He would have to give up his mayoral duties first.
He's already written in The Independent, which apparently, I didn't know this, gets handed out to everyone in Parliament.
Right.
Or it's given out at Parliament. He's written that if his time is called or whatever, if he can help Labour in any way, he will stand up and be counted. And so he obviously has that ambition. And the thing which is dangerous for me with him is I do actually think he could give the illusion of not being a woke lefty just for the fact that he's a fairly ordinary looking man who speaks fairly ordinary.
It's what they kind of wanted out of Starmer.
Yeah. So he gives the illusion that he could be for the working man, even though he obviously isn't.
I think he's a lot more so than the rest of Labour is, though.
But that's not saying much.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that, but we got to take what we can get at this point.
Although I have been told by a good Northern friend that apparently the North does hate Andy Burnham, but I'm not so sure. I'll have to see it.
I think it's varied because they obviously don't hate him in the fact that he got elected again.
I mean, in Manchester, but people say Manchester is just like London, don't they?
I don't think it's quite as bad, but there's not quite as many stabbings.
My ideal scenario: there's a lot of controversy in Labour. They lose a lot of support, and members get pissed off. But Starmer has just got enough power to hold on to a general election, say in a few years' time, and then they get absolutely pounded in that election, and then it's literally this party's dead. That's the ideal scenario. And then
again, I don't think it's an ideal scenario unless the Conservatives split as well.
But I think
because otherwise we have then, as much as the Heritage Party can provide a viable opposition, that's not going to be for another couple of decades at least.
Yeah, both parties need to be smashed, but I don't think that you have to smash one of them I don't think you need the other one to smash the other one. I think we need to get rid of Labour entirely, just wipe them off the map. Then we can get rid of the Conservatives in hopefully an actually patriotic working class party replaces Labour, and that is the challenger to the Conservatives.
Honestly, I think Labour wouldn't be in this mess if they had gone with the other Miliband.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's funny you say that because I don't think people think about that very much. David Miliband is so much more sensible. Like he speaks so much better. He's smarter. You would not have had Corbyn if you had David Miliband.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And obviously Ed Miliband introduced the £2 membership and things like that, which partly led to Corbyn as well.
Some of us would both of us agree that both the Tories and Labour should be split into 2 to 3 parties. Well, yeah, both of them should. Because the Conservatives aren't conservative at this point. You've got the neocons, the Boris. There are a few smaller Conservative voices.
Yeah, I like John Redwood.
Yeah.
Jacob
most of them are quite happy sitting on the backbench, and that's it.
Jacob Rees-Mogg is still pretty sensible, despite not, making all the noises. Yeah, he doesn't make all.
I think whether that's his hands being tied by his position.
Well, he did actually say on a podcast once that I think he voted in favour of the government. I can't remember what it was. I'm thinking possibly HS2, which is a bad thing, obviously. But he actually said that, well, one should not vote against the government on every occasion because it gives a bad impression or something.
Yeah.
So
again,
his hands are tied to an extent. Yeah, exactly. Someone said Tom Hunt, MP for Ipswich, is decent, and the best Conservative by a long shot, in my opinion, is Bradders. What's his name? Bradley something.
Ben Bradley, is it?
Ben Bradley. Yeah, he is very good. He is the only one who I would have respect for to a major. Well, John Redwood is good, but Ben Bradley actually understands the cultural issues, unlike none of the rest of them.
I mean, personally, I think that if one of the best things that could be done to help resolve issues with Parliament, and it's going to seem like a really weirdly dumb change, is a uniform. I'm not talking about business, like give them an actual uniform to wear.
And surely they all have to dress like Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Yeah, sure.
double-breasted suit. That's always
Why
a
not?
winner.
I'm down with that. But make everyone have to dress. I think more like judicial sort of thing. So you've got to go with the very flowing, over the top sort of thing. But something like that, put everyone on that equal playing field, and realize how ridiculous they are. But yeah, split the Tories up, split Labour up. Just let Lib Dems just flail about as they do.
Peter Hitchens says the only way to basically bring conservatism to the country is to destroy the Conservative Party. And I pretty much subscribe to that. I want to see a picture of the British Parliament in like the 1920s just to see the kind of attire they were wearing back then.
Let's have a look, see if I can find something.
They have like the little collars that are like, they go up and it's like a little bend, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Basically, anything traditional is based and red pilled. I think we can all.
I mean, I think they were just suits at the time, actually. Still.
Do you know what? I just saw a picture then of like a big tower kind of thing in a conference room with the Union Jack at the top. I was like, oh wow, that's cool. And then immediately I saw the National Front symbol underneath it. No, sorry, it's not the National Front. It's Mosley's party.
Oh,
what's his party? I can't remember what his party was called. But yeah, you know, the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Do you reckon he chose the lightning bolt just because he thought lightning bolts were cool?
I mean, it certainly has connotations.
Oh, it's going to be something to do with war, obviously.
So yeah.
There's a very good talking about films and politics. There's a great filmmaker he's a British filmmaker, and it's all about the massacre that happened in Manchester,
right?
For universal suffrage,
right?
I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, and it basically shows the politics of the time, people having debates in pubs, and the building of this, because it happened right after going to war with France, and so you had the soldiers coming back, and it was the time. I'll have to look it up, but it's not very often you get a film that you really appreciate like that.
I don't see. I've never had a problem with political ideas in films. I think it's just often the way they're handled in a lot of modern films. That's, I think, where the issue of representation and wokeness and that getting into the film industry becomes detrimental to it, when that is prioritized above good storytelling.
Well,
I know you're not a comic book follower or anything.
No.
There's this talk about Warner Brothers trying to make the next film Superman black. And a lot of comic book fans are saying, well, hang on. There's a fuck ton of black superheroes. Why not use them? You know, I don't want to see black Clark Kent. I would like Calvin Ellis, who's black Superman from another Earth. Yeah, that's actually more interesting because he's got a different backstory. He's a whole new character. Or there's Steel, there's Black Lightning, there's John Stewart Green Lantern, there's Static Shock, there's Vixen. There's so many. I want to say diverse in air quotes, but there are so many characters to tell. You know, I've said this before about the Netflix and BBC adaptation of the Iliad, where they made Achilles black. Achilles of the fair hair with his golden flowing hair, made him into a bald black man.
Well, we've discussed this before, haven't we? Anne Boleyn being black and all this kind of.
And there is a character in the Iliad that is a sub-Saharan African black man who is described as the equal in fighting of Achilles. Make a story about him. Make a story about the Mari Empire. It's not that people don't want diverse and interesting stories and whatnot. It's just people don't want to be preached to when it doesn't make sense.
The film I was trying to think of, by the way, is Peterloo, and I saw someone beat me to it and mentioned it in the comments. But that's a film.
Heard of it, but I've not seen it.
I reckon that's a film you'd really like, Adnan.
So I'll
I
look it
think
up.
that's right up your street. Yeah, have a look at it.
Hmm.
Oh, see, that's kind of funny. It had a budget of $18 million, right?
Yeah.
It made $1.9 million. That's a fail by any standard, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's a great film. But yeah, the director's Mike Leigh. Yeah, I'm sure he's probably a lefty, but he's one of the ones who actually has some integrity. It's kind of like, although Ken Loach is the famous politics-heavy director, and he is a big lefty and big Labour supporter, but he did make some good films. The one about Northern Ireland, I think, is pretty good. But he made that absolutely well. To be fair, I've only seen parts of it, but it's about the guy who's a carpenter or something, and he gets enrolled on Universal Credit. And to me, it's just like total propaganda.
I still maintain the two best political films. They are explicitly political in many points. Both German films. There's Der Untergang, which everyone's heard of in its English title, Downfall, which is the one where it's got the one where the Hitler meme comes from, him screaming 999.
Oh right, okay.
It's Hitler's last days in the bunker. It's a fantastic film. And the other one is called Des Leben der Anderen, The Lives of Others, which is about the Stasi in East Germany and snitching and so forth. It's again a really, really good film. I think they're probably the two. They're how you do politically interesting films, kind of right, without having to say, "Oh yeah, let's beat everyone over their head with it," because we're going to be as subtle as the film Rent.
So, which one out of all of them is the best one? Just for my own reference.
Either Downfall or Des Leben der Anderen. Downfall's probably easier to follow with subtitles. Des Leben der Anderen is a bit convoluted at points, so I'd probably recommend Downfall more.
I'll tell you what, one of my favorite films is Gladiator.
Yep.
None of it is historically accurate whatsoever, but it's a bloody great movie.
Yep.
But it is actually quite interesting because they basically took real historical events and mishmashed them all together.
As someone who is a stickler for historicity in films, if they're trying for it, when they openly sort of go, "No, we ain't trying," I'm okay with that.
And
at the end of the day, make a good film, people won't care. Yeah.
And I even get a bit emotional with that film towards the end. And she's like, he was a soldier of Rome, I was like, oh, he died for his nation. And what a beautiful thing.
Because I've just said 300. Zack Snyder, I think, is a phenomenal filmmaker in his cinematography, but it's a great film. Like it's decidedly average if you take it at its face value, but it's so engaging.
It's great entertainment. I don't think it's a fantastic film, but it's great entertainment for sure.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't try to be historically accurate.
No,
but it's just fun. Did the Spartans have a giant pit they kicked their enemies in? No, but it looks fucking cool.
Yeah. Oh, I was hoping there'd be some kind of truth to that.
So I think there's something about that. There's always the thing of Spartans throwing dead babies off of cliffs and so forth. But
were the Spartans, very much a barbaric sort of people? Were they?
No, not barbaric at all. They were very regimented, definitely, but not barbaric.
Regimented, but also kind of barbaric.
No, cultured, very cultured.
Very cultured.
They were also very well militarily trained.
Would you say that the Athenians were more civilized, though?
In places, yeah. This is the thing. We tend to try and paint historical societies with these caricatures, and obviously it's never as simple as that.
There's a Bridge Too Far, The Last Samurai. People talk about good political films that they've seen. I mentioned earlier Charlie Wilson's War. Obviously, that's quite good, and also Zulu. Yeah, great film.
People go on about Zulu being racist.
Mm.
The Zulus in the film Zulu are actual Zulus.
Right. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the Battle of Rorke's Drift is a fascinating thing to read about and learn about anyway, because there were a lot of Zulus fighting for the British.
Mm. I also quite liked, not too long ago, there's a film called Vice, which is made by the same person as who made The Big Short, and it's all about Vice President Dick Cheney and how he was the most powerful vice president in America, and what he did, like the amount of power he did.
I mean, he got away with shooting someone, so...
Yeah. Well, it was an accident, to be fair, but yeah, it was pretty irresponsible.
In the same way that accident.
But it's funny because the film actually, it really goes on heavy trying to portray him as like a really bad, evil guy.
Yeah.
And because they show him like in the desert, like, getting drunk, and like they're working like on these electric pylons, and then one person falls and like breaks his leg, and he's just like having a fag, like look at him, and he's like, back to work, right, okay. But the thing is, I was watching them build the story up about he consolidated power through things like executive orders and things like that, and I just couldn't help but admire him and be like, wow, this guy's clever.
Yeah. He was certainly an influential political figure.
And it's kind of another big news story, actually. There's a lot of big news stories happening at the moment. Is Liz Cheney. She lost her job as the head of the GOP in America. That's a very big story. And
I kind of just switched off to a lot of American politics now.
To me, that's where all the action is, because like you say, the Conservatives are well in power, and there is no major opposition there. So for me, at least in America, you actually have the conflict there of we might actually possibly win, whilst at the moment we haven't got a chance of winning. The Conservatives are good right now.
Well, yes, there was a letter, an open letter from retired US generals questioning Joe Biden's health.
Yeah.
Signed by 124 US military officers.
And election fraud, I think, as well.
It's these aren't just nobodies either.
But to be fair, I think the story of Liz Cheney being gotten rid of is the big story, because they've actually, they voted her out and they've replaced her with another woman. I've forgotten her name, but she is very much a pro-Trump person. So the Republican Party is pretty much now in the hands of Trump, basically, which is brilliant. So it's going to...
Elise Stefanik.
Okay. And we've got the Arizona audit, and I'm hearing that I'm ready to be disappointed because we've had so many disappointments, but I've been hearing that they found a lot of discrepancy in this audit, and apparently it will actually all come out this time, and we will actually get some solid evidence on the show. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah,
I'm keeping up with another podcast, which you should all be listening to. Well, they do a hell of a lot of episodes, which gets a bit annoying because it's hard to keep up with it all. But Steve Bannon's War Room keeps you abreast of all that stuff going on at the moment. So that's a good one to listen to. But yeah, I do feel that the front lines of the cultural war is in America, and we will feel the repercussions of that in some way.
Definitely. But again, America is a lot more polarized and reactionarily vocal. The United Kingdom tends to be a bit more composed and reserved most of the time. So for better or worse as well. But I think that's going to be the mitigating factor on how much culture change in America affects us.
It's going to be interesting to see. It's kind of I was thinking just then, it's kind of like the situation where Rome fell, and it's like the Democrats are like, come on, let's make Rome fall. And the Republicans are actually like, no, actually, the Roman Empire is pretty good. Well, I wouldn't mind keeping that.
But to me, I think it's more the Republicans saying, look, the barbarians at the gates, and the Democrats are saying, are they 50% women?
Yeah, definitely.
It's I think it's almost two sides arguing on completely different things. It's like two pigeons trying to play chess.
And another thing I keep hearing about, it's amazing that Biden has been in power for a few months now, and it's all going so terribly. You've got
the gas shortages,
the cyber attack, so major oil shortage, and they have all these oil fields that could be producing oil right now, but they're not because of his stupid green agenda. Massive border crisis, with people pouring in. You've got big inflation now, like things like lumber and stuff are like doubling in price, and it's only like 4 or 5 months into the presidency.
Well, again, and also then the Middle East kicking off, It's like as that meme that's gone around goes. It turns out when the leader of the world's strongest military is effectively shouting on Twitter in all caps, "Fuck about and find out," the Middle East pipes down.
Yeah,
funny that.
Yeah, Fat Boy and his missiles.
I genuinely think if it wasn't for COVID, Trump would have been re-elected.
I'm not so sure about that because I think the fraud is what won it for him, really. I know what you mean, but I think it probably could be a blessing in disguise in the fact that this has allowed Trump to consolidate the power in the Republican Party and make it in his own image. Whilst if he won a second term, I think there would be less focus on that.
Again, is that a good thing?
It is a good thing because the Republican Party needs to be the strong, real conservative party.
Yeah, but it needs to be not focused around an individual.
No, but the thing is,
personality, which there is a very strong cult of personality around Trump.
No, but
the thing is, when Trump goes, he needs to have a successor, and we don't live in a dynastic society.
He already does.
There needs to be a myriad of potential successors.
You must know his successor. It's already been tipped.
Go on.
Ron DeSantis.
Again, not big enough name.
I think Ron DeSantis is the very natural successor to Trump. And I actually would push against what you're saying. I think Trumpism, it's more the ideas that Trump perpetuates. It's not so much about Trump himself.
I hope so, but it does walk that very fine line of its leaning. It's got that potential to fall into this cult of personality, which there is a lot of America that has this, yes, it's Trump because it's Trump and not because, they're for Trump to own the libs, not because they think Trump's actually good. And he becomes the God Emperor that can do no wrong, rather than, okay, this guy's pretty good and is doing a lot of things we like, but let's criticize him where he's doing things we don't.
I do think that the legacy would quite happily pass on to Ron DeSantis, and I think you would still get the same movement. But under Ron DeSantis, it would be less about the personality because Trump is obviously just a massive personality. And I think that would be a good thing because I did think you needed Trump and his rambunctiousness to
shake things up, definitely.
Yeah, he was there to
I can see
break down the wall.
Having the same issues that UKIP did after Farage left.
Yeah, well, the problem with that is that the tyrants
didn't
they?
A lot of other issues as well, but you see what I mean in terms of the Farage party.
But that's kind of funny because I thought that what happened with UKIP is actually quite similar to what happened with the Republican Party. And Liz Cheney is Neil Hamilton and Patricia Mountain and people like that. These are the people that didn't want, the crazy right wingers to take over UKIP, even though we were the vast majority. And that's the same with the Liz Cheney. Like, we can't have these crazy people taking over our noble party. People like Patricia Mountain and Neil Hamilton.
This becomes an issue
in UKIP.
And this happens on both sides, though. This is more an issue of not being willing to debate and negotiate with your opposition because you see them as too extreme. And there is no way to talk someone down from an extreme position if you don't engage. Now, you might never change their mind. You don't have to change everyone's mind. I've said before, a good friend of mine is very, very far left. He took a political compass recently. It was minus 99, minus 100. So he is literal anarchist communist. But he and I can still have decent discussions and so forth.
Well, I always said, it's not actually people like Jeremy Corbyn I despise at all. These are the people, at least relatively honest.
Yeah.
Obviously it's the Starmers and the Blairs which frustrate me because they are crazy far leftists, but they're trying to act like they're not, just so they're trying to fool people into believing that they're moderate.
I don't know who they're going to fool at this point.
Well, they're not fooling anyone at the moment.
I think ultimately it's just people are going to become so disenfranchised with politics in general that people are going to just stop voting and stop caring. So no matter who you vote for, the government always gets in.
Yeah. Well, as I was working today, I was listening to a podcast, the latest Delingpod podcast, which was actually very good. I haven't heard of this guy before, but he was basically explaining the situation, how central banks basically run the world at this point. I don't know how much you buy into this idea of central banks, the Bank of England, and
when people say run the world and use terms like controlled opposition, I understand the logic behind it, but I don't agree with because the wording implies that it's this everyone sat round a table twice a month saying this is what we're going to do with the world. And no, it's if it is something like that, it's not like that. It's a case of people with a similar set of ideas and working in self-interest.
But this is what the person said on the podcast, right? The Bank of England apparently has shareholders, and by law, we're not allowed to know who these shareholders are. And so basically the Bank of England is a private company, and the Bank of England own a lot of the debt of the UK government. And so basically they're calling the shots of the UK government, and we're basically at the behest of the Bank of England. That's the idea, basically.
You know, they only own 3% of the Bank of England.
What, the private shareholders?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is all new stuff to me. I haven't gone into central banks and the control which they have.
Apparently, George Washington was a shareholder
In the Bank of England?
During the War of American Independence, no less, as well.
Wow.
But, yeah.
So the Bank of England went full Federal Reserve. Cheers, William of Orange.
Bring back the gold standard in every country.
Yeah. And that's another thing I've been hearing a hell of a lot about, because I've been watching various YouTube channels like Kitco News. They're quite a good economic one, and a few other things. And we're basically going to have a crash at some point, is what I'm hearing from quite a few people now.
It's absolutely inevitable.
Yeah. So do you think it's going to be a big crash? I mean, if you look at like the inflation, obviously we're going into heavy inflation now. and you're getting the rising of prices of basic goods, that's where we're going to feel it first. Is it going to be a situation where will stocks even crash? I'm not even sure.
I'm no market expert by any stretch, but from my understanding, yes, I think there will be a crash that's inevitable. Will be larger than the 2008 crash, probably compounded by a lot of other current events going on as well. And it depends what else happens, because this is how civilizations fall. It's never down to a single issue. It's down to issues compounding at once. If it's just a market crash, the world could stomach that, as they did in 2008. It wasn't nice, but they can do it. They did it in the Great Depression as well. But you combine that with social division. Say we get a spate of droughts across the UK or across the world, and then there's issues with food and water supplies. Oh, wait, what's happening in California? And then you combine that with international conflicts, such as going on in the Middle East, and rising other powers, such as China, then a lot of these things combine into causing societies to fragment and break down.
It does make you question, because it does feel like we are in revolutionary times. But
the latter days of Rome were preceded by a period of how shall I put this? Decadence, yeah. Which is what a lot of society is, to an extent, at this point. Both of us included, frankly. Everyone in Western society, really.
Don't get me wrong, I love a pret-a-manger.
Well, exactly. We have moved well beyond subsistence levels and basic necessities. The amount of, people can complain about not having enough money to do this, that, and the other whilst buying a new iPhone.
I got mine here.
What has changed everything is the rise of information technology in the past 30 years, and how much that has changed society. No one could have properly predicted how quickly that would get on set.
I mean, I see this all the time with the middle class. They are lefty, horrible politics, and they tend to be of a higher wealth. And so there must be a correlation as far as I'm concerned.
You say that, but then look at the strugglingly poor middle class of London.
Yeah, but
again, wealth and class are not directly correlated. There's a correlation a lot of the time, but it's not directly linked.
Yeah, but they've gotten to where they are as a result of this middle class stupid way of thinking. But I think most of these people weren't originally from that poor level, which they are at now, because this is the future that they.
Well, you've got to look at everything relative to the area, because abject poverty is quite rare in the UK, especially. So you have to look at relative poverty to the area. So you can be in relative poverty in central London, but if you move up north, the amount of money you have is not going to put you in relative poverty. So that definitely needs to be taken into account. And I don't think a lot of the world is ready to acknowledge a lot of that stuff.
I think people like you and me are the more oddball ones who we live in this decadent culture, but we're like, no, we don't want this.
I think a lot of people long for a simpler time. But that's rose-tinted glasses, because we have records of that all throughout history. People saying, "Oh, back when I was young, that things were so much better." We have records of that during the days of the Roman Empire, during the Middle Ages, and so forth. So
the middle classes, they long for simpler times, but then they still advocate for gender neutral bathrooms and stuff like that. So they obviously are not going with what they preach. they just go a lot. They catch on to the next craze, like anything.
Yeah,
any progressive craze. So
I think to a lot of working class people, it's sort of a non-issue.
They're filling the void of where religion used to be.
The idea of equality in that is a non-issue to the most working class people, because if you're not a dick, that's it. That's generally as far as people take it. And you look at a lot of traditional families. As much as people say they're normally patriarchally led, the matriarch of the household often holds a lot of power and a lot of voice. This is why there's that trope of the woman telling, or the wife telling the husband to come running home, and does. It's like.
Well, I loved. Someone spoke about this when they were talking about Catholic Ireland. It's this historian, and they were saying it was very common for the woman would get the paycheck from the man as soon as they come home, because they knew that they would go down to the pub and spend it all getting drunk. And apparently I was speaking to my girlfriend about this, and in Mexican society, that is pretty much what happens in Mexico. As soon as the man gets the paycheck, they give it to the wife, and the wife allocates that accordingly.
Sorry, someone's just put a joke in the chat, and it's my type of humour. The question of sex and gender is like the Twin Towers. There used to be two, but now it's a sensitive subject. I fucking love that. It's one of the best jokes I've heard in a long time.
People long for a time when they weren't being told to care about issues around race and gender, so they give in to confrontation. Yeah, exactly.
The point. People didn't care what your skin color was, or any of that, because they cared about, as Martin Luther King wanted, the content of your character. Now, yes, there were some very racist people in the past, but again, even throughout history, you sat down someone who's incredibly racist next to someone to say a black slave and got them talking, they'd probably actually get along if you actually managed to get them talking. There's in Black Man, I remember in America, there's a guy I remember reading about who was going to Klan meetings, and a black guy going to Klan meetings and actively de-radicalizing people. So yeah, that's how things come up. It's, we focus so much on what divides us rather than just saying, look, let's have a chat, because that's what identitarianism seems to do. And ultimately, I've said this for a long time, if the color of your skin, who you like to sleep with, or what's between your legs is the most important thing about you, you must be pretty fucking boring.
Yeah, it's not a major issue, is it?
Exactly.
People make it into a big issue.
I remember years and years ago, a friend of mine came out to me as gay. I said, okay. And they were expecting a lot more of a response, and they seemed quite upset that I didn't have a response. I appreciate you felt like it was going to be a strong clown, but so at the end of the day, I mean this in the nicest possible way. I don't care. You're my friend because of who you are as a person, not because of what you do in a bedroom with someone. That's irrelevant to me. That's it. The only time I care about who someone wants to sleep with is if it's me.
Yeah. The British people in general are a moderate, sensible people. It's just the politics has just been totally corrupted by people who have interests in it being a certain way.
People taking generalizing, sweeping statements as a literal. I mean, Churchill said some very racist things. Again, you can't excuse them. They were the product of the time, for one. But also, sometimes a generalization is meant to be a generalization and a caricature. It's not meant to say every single person is like this.
No.
Stereotypes exist for a reason, because they're exaggerations.
Yeah. There is truth in every stereotype, I believe. In the vast majority of
Again,
them.
they're meant to be exaggerations, partially for comedic effects, amongst other things.
See, I do reckon the French at one point did wear black and white stripy jumpers and carry a baguette on their shoulder for sure. That definitely happened.
Oh, definitely. Well, it would have genuinely though. That was sort of a common style in France at some point.
There you go, then. Exactly.
Similarly, so I say they lost a lot of wars. They actually haven't lost a lot of wars, but we beat them a few times. So
we've had a good run in recent history.
Yeah,
against the French.
Well, I think we are about to hit the 2-hour mark there.
Yes, I think it's time to call it a day.
Indeed,
that's a wrap.
Thank you all for joining us this week. It's been a nice, fun, casual Friday.
Yeah. What's that film, very quickly, that you recommended?
Downfall.
I've totally forgotten.
Downfall.
Okay, I might have a look at that this weekend.
Maybe
the viewers can have. Sorry?
In German, it's Der Untergang.
Der Untergang. Okay, maybe the viewers would like to have a view of that film also.
Definitely worth a watch. That and Das Leben der Anderen, The Lives of Others.
Great. Okay. Thanks for watching, guys. Yes, I do think we'll do one next week, probably around 7:30, possibly 8, but usually 7:30. So let's say 7:30 for now.
Do all the YouTube algorithm nice things, like, subscribe, share around with your friends. And all
subscribe, join the Facebook group, and everything else that people do. Click the bell.
And if get more people watching. It's always good to seem to be getting a couple of regulars in the chat now, which is always nice.
Yeah. If you have any criticisms as well, please criticize away. If you think we're doing these too long, or if you think we're rambling too much, I'm sure there's definitely, there obviously is a bit of rambling. We went through the Incas and everything else. So
that was kind of our original pitch for this, of two guys sort of chatting shit over a pint.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to do one at a pub for sure. One time.
Hopefully they'll be opening soon. Well, they should be opening soon. So we'll have to sort
yeah. All right. I'll catch you later, guys. See you later.
See you later.